Welcome, everyone. This is Illiterate. This week we are covering The Batman. My name is Evan Scott Russell. I checked out Batman, the 1966 film, because I'd never seen that before.
My name is Taylor Zabloski, and somehow I ended up looking at World War II propaganda films. How did that happen? Let's talk about it.
Much in the style of our James Bond series, This is part one of Batman, and we are going to trace what in the world this character has been and what he's supposed to be and what he might go on to be over the course of 2 episodes. So welcome, everyone. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Well, the big question, why so much variety across the years? Did nobody have a vision for it? How did all this come to be? Where are all the disparate pieces? Evan was telling me it's like if you take all of the versions of him and then put them together, you end up with nothing because they
if all the rules cancel out all the other rules, then there is no it all cancels each other out and there is no character by the end.
And
everything changes. I think the only thing that's consistent between everything I've seen is the cape.
Right. Yeah. So we will try to get through how all of that happened, starting from the very beginning. We're really only going to get up to Evan watched the 66 Bonkers film. We'll touch on leading up to Tim Burton's 89, but there are 13 feature-length theatrical movies, and we're really only going to hit one of them. Two of them, it's so all that, the rest of what most people know is coming in part two. So this is what nobody really is focused on.
And personally, I am interested in what in the world happens between 66 and 89 in particular, because we've touched on a couple things in this realm before. We've done some Justice League. We did Joker back of, a couple years ago.
Yeah.
And I know a little bit more about the comic book
scene,
getting off the ground, the comic book scene getting off the ground. We did Stan Lee as well. But then I don't really know between the 66 film, which is kind of codified Batman's TV show, Adam West, what we know. I don't really know what in the world was happening with the property between 66 and 89. So I'm excited to get into that, particularly in this part.
But first, we must start before that.
Back to the 30s.
Early, Superman popped on the scene. Action Comics, National Comics, which later came DC, needed superheroes. They said, they got them, we need them. First of all, the guy who gets his name on everything, Bob Kane, primarily responsible. Bill Finger was also involved, and there's a whole scandal around him not getting credit.
Yeah, it just off the bat here, if this is news to you that one of the biggest characters, period, ever created had a stolen credit. If you didn't know that, there's a wonderful, wonderful Hulu documentary that came out in 2017 called Batman and Bill. It'll tell all of that story about how Bill Finger did not get his credit attributed to Batman all this time. And now it's retroactively, they've gone back and restored that credit to everything. Everything has been retroactively had Bill Finger's name put on it. So it's a wonderful documentary. I highly recommend it. It's on Hulu.
I'll put the link in the show notes. I glanced at it. We won't get too much then into how all that went to be, but needless to say, like you said, it really didn't come about until 2015 was when DC started putting his name back on things.
It's shocking. I mean, it's absolutely wild to me. I didn't know anything about it until the documentary came out. When it came out, I watched it and was absolutely flabbergasted that this character I've known my entire existence. Actually, there was somebody else that is really responsible for just as much of him, if not more. So it's pretty incredible.
Yeah. So Bob Kane, starting out, he gets the call, we want a Superman-esque person. So he calls him the Batman. So the is there from the start, which I think they're alluding to with the new one.
Yes, that's in the new one. If you're looking at them in a list, it's the only way. Like right now, my tabs are Batman and Bill, Batman 1966 film, the Batman film.
So that's the start. He calls him the Batman, but a lot of pull from Superman. So he's got reddish tights, boots, no gloves. He's got a small, what they call domino mask, like the Incredibles characters have.
Oh, yes. And, interesting.
He's got these wings sticking out to look like bat wings. They said he was inspired by the ornithopter flyer of Da Vinci, the sketch he did of a flapping wing kind of contraption. So more spindly bat not a cape even from the
I'm just
start.
imagining Edna walking through all the concepts for what a Batman could be,
And this is one
what
of them.
could look like.
Yeah. So Bill Finger then is the one that makes all the suggestions to the costume that we know. Get rid of the red, make it black and gray, give him gloves, make it a cape, all the put the
Bring in
cowl.
some of the noir elements there, you know.
Yeah, and then the cowl with the ears, which is the most iconic thing, is Bill Finger's addition.
Gosh.
The other thing that he comes up with is the secret identity Bruce Wayne, which is based on historical characters that I didn't know about. So Bruce, the first name, comes from Robert Bruce, who was the Scottish patriot of the 1300s. He was alongside William Wallace. He was this medieval freedom fighter and then became the King of Scotland. And then the Wayne side of it, he was thinking, well, Wayne, he was trying to think of some sort of colonialist gentry eluded name. So he thought Adams, like Revolutionary War, Jefferson kind of names. There was this, I don't know whether he was a general or colonel, but he went by Mad Anthony Wayne because he had this crazy temper. He fought in a lot of revolutionary battles in Pennsylvania.
Okay, I like this.
So that's where he gets the last name Wayne from. It's cool that both parts, it wasn't just like, sounds good. No, they're actually based on
I love that.
Varying historical characters for their attributes as well.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. That's just well researched. It has a reason.
Yeah.
Just
a feel to it.
Chef's kiss. It just you have a reason to exist. You have purpose.
And then the superhero influence stuff. Some we might know. There was a pulp character called the Shadow in the 1930s. This is really the archetype of the superhero. It was started from a radio drama. He was just the mysterious narrator, and then he got his own radio drama.
Yes.
Where he was doing his own thing. And I believe for a time, a young Orson Welles was doing his voice.
Really? Oh, wow.
Part of his oeuvre. And when he moved on to newspaper comics and other things, he was depicted as this vigilante superhero clad in black operating after dark.
I like it. The Shadow.
He's the true beginning of this. This is in the 1930s with that pulp noir.
It reminds me of Zorro, just the black shadow figure, the silhouette.
Yeah.
That's what. Yeah,
exactly.
I don't know. I'm getting that reverberating back through all of the visuals.
So the film The Mark of Zorro came out in 1920, under 2 decades before, and in a lot of versions, it's the film his parents are seeing when then they go out and get shot in the alley.
That's right.
Although it's not mentioned in these early incarnations. They're just at a movie.
I didn't mean to be so on point.
Well, Bill Finger had said the Douglas Fairbanks version from the 1920s, like you said, the costume and the secret identity aspect of it was.
Well, when you were saying the elements that he brought into it, and you bring up the Shadow and Orson Welles' radio play, and how to move an entity onto a physical, and the rudimentary sense. When we're thinking 1920s and 30s like this, that was just the first image I had. That's time appropriate. Is exactly what you said.
Yeah.
That depiction of Zorro, and that's immediately what came to mind. So hey, this is why we do the show.
Yeah, it's all swirling in there. And then 2 more things that were swirling that Bill Finger and Bob Kane directly said were this film, The Bat Whispers, came out in 1930. It is a sound picture, but it's black and white, and it is free on YouTube. I'll post a link. It is notable filmically because it's one of the first pictures that was filmed in widescreen. Bizarre for 1930.
Really?
Yeah.
My God.
So it has a lot in the frame, and a lot of the camera work is rather revolutionary. They did a lot of swooping through miniature sets or, falling down the side of a building.
Wow, yeah.
That kind of stuff is pretty wild for 1930. But the premise is there's this mysterious caped killer who's taking out people looking for this treasure in this old mansion. It's more of a horror whodunit, who's the killer, trying to figure out in this group of people. But they said we saw that and thought this is cool. we want to pull from this.
That.
Yeah,
I love that. Okay.
And then very last promise for their influences that really did tie in a different way is the Phantom, which was this daily newspaper comic superhero started in 1936, 3 years before, and it's still running as of 2022.
What?
which is
Really?
wild. Yeah. And
Oh my
the
gosh.
thing that they pull
That
from,
was one just beyond my reach when we were just talking about these early iterations and
yeah,
characters evolving and having pieces of each other. This was the one just beyond my reach. I couldn't remember his name, but
yeah.
I
He's
did
got the
not know it was still running. Oh my
the
gosh.
purple skin tight suit, if you've ever
Yeah.
seen that. Yeah. He's the first fictional hero to wear that skin tight costume because this is before Superman. And he's also, in terms of the drawing of the character, he has a mask with no pupils. It's just a solid white, which
Mm.
Batman gives
Mm-hmm.
him this air of mystery. But the big thing is he has no superpowers, so he relies on his intelligence and the myth of the fact that he is this forever living ghost, which
Oh,
Batman
nice.
pulls a lot from,
Yes.
this mythical non-human entity.
He could keep living forever because secretly he's been passed
And
down.
he's a symbol, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's the preface for all this. This is all what they're swirling with influences even before Batman. He comes out in Detective Comics number 27. It's not his own original. So it makes sense then that he's got this detective noir angle because he's a superhero-esque person. But if you were picking up Detective Comics, you'd be like, I want gangsters and gunfights and mystery and detectives.
Gotcha. So you pick up Detective Comics and you're looking for Al Capone type,
Yeah.
that kind of stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
And
Okay.
so the origin of him, he's originally introduced, he is a ruthless vigilante. He's killing people, he's maiming them. It's very much in the style of the pulps, but he's got this costume and he's swinging through the skies and he's got this cape and a mask to fit in with the superhero trend that's coming about.
Mm-hmm.
So as far as all the little pieces, we'll start trickling them in where all this stuff is coming in, the elements that we know and love. Commissioner Gordon was in the very first one, number 27.
Okay.
So that's prime. That's always been there.
Always been there. He's a pillar.
The police element. He's a
Part of the
vigilante.
foundation
Yeah.
of this story, folks.
The utility belt, which we talked about with Justice League, Gardner Fox, who did all that. He was Ghost uncredited with coming up with that. And that's 2 issues later in 29. And then the Batarang in 31. The origin of his parents getting shot was in 33, which, like I said, was written by Bill Finger.
Mm-hmm.
Robin was in 38. And this was
Okay.
almost even a storytelling device because Finger wanted sort of a Watson character that he could talk to because he's tired of having him just thinking in the bubbles. It's still mostly detective stuff, so you need somebody to riff off
Good to
of.
know,
Yeah.
because we might get to that here in a second, though, because that was one of the first images in the 66 film, as I immediately was like, let's explain their relationship.
Yeah. We'll get to that for sure.
Yeah.
But just know that it was almost a
from
device.
The need of
Yeah.
it. Yes, absolutely. The functionality of it is to get him to, verbalize
Yeah.
for the camera.
Yeah. The very next year is when he gets his own solo line, just Batman, not affiliated with Detective Comics.
Okay.
And in the first issue of that is when we get Joker and
God,
yeah.
did Detective Comics feel a little empty after? So it's like you go into 20-something issues,
Yeah.
and then you have this crazy character come in, and then people are interested in that, and you start following that
Right.
and start writing that, and then it's so successful. It's like, well, yeah, let's make him his own thing.
Yeah.
And so, okay, then all that. Then he leaves and he's in his own.
That's a great question. Yeah, I don't know much. I didn't follow. I literally stopped caring about Detective Comics the same
That's
time.
what I'm saying.
Yeah.
That's what I'm learning. I'm like, for the first time, I'm like, well, what if I was a fan of Detective Comics? What was I going for? What was I picking up the issue expecting? And it's like Al Capone, like, you'll never catch me alive. Okay, but then this character's
Changes
coming
it all.
in and he just like takes the spotlight, takes all the attention. It's like, now we're learning about his parents, and it's like, now he's got a boy wonder.
Yeah.
And then he leaves and has his own thing, and I'm assuming that perhaps maybe he comes back to Detective Comics.
I think he does, but
also maybe not much.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
just if you're a fan of Detective Comics, I know maybe you started something incredible, but that must have been a whirlwind of just what is this? What's happening?
This is also the time in the golden age where all the comic companies are trying everything.
Yeah.
So I'm sure that the audience is just going with it. But yeah, the first issue of Batman by himself is where they introduce the Joker and Catwoman, staples of the identity. This is also It was supposed to be in Detective Comics, but then it got moved over to Batman, his original one. He shoots and kills some people. And
Oh my
this
god.
was the last time that happened because the new story editor, he was like, no, this is one of the rules. He can't kill or use a gun anymore. This is his own thing. So
No more gun, no more bat gun.
as far as that element, people think, like you said, the cape. Oh, also, he doesn't kill anybody. That's his rule. But that's not true. For a year, he was killing people and getting away with it. Another uncredited ghost artist was this guy, Dick Sprang, and he, uncredited, was the original design of the Riddler when he starts popping up. And
Okay,
so
interesting.
already there's a billion names getting floated around and ghost names and whatever. It's like you can already see why there's so many modifications and alterations to his look.
Because it's nobody's at this point, it's everyone's. If you're in the room, you're like, it's just as much yours, basically. How Bob Kane was able to, like, consolidate that much name power, will never understand how I need to watch the
Yeah.
documentary again, because, like, with how many people are responsible for what we think of on the outside, we barely started this episode. Uh, like,
Yeah.
like, it's absolutely ridiculous that anybody almost thinks that they could put ownership to it, because this is a hive mind of everybody creating something
Yeah.
that's bigger than them.
Well, just a tease from the documentary. His father was a lawyer, and so he got
There you
the
go.
contract that said my name on everything, no one
He
else.
said something and everyone went like, it sounds good.
Yeah. Yeah. So by 1942, with all these elements, basically the whole Batman shtick is established. The mythos is there. The costume, it's the blue-gray. That's the go-to coloration, and that's what we're going with.
Mm-hmm.
This gets me to my tease at the beginning of World War II propaganda films, which I had no concept of being connected to the Batman property.
Right.
But this is the first film adaptation, which nobody
What?
knows about.
What?
Yeah. Yeah. 1943, a year after they've basically got down what they want him to be, there is a live action theatrical serial. So it's not technically a feature, but it was 15 parts, 15 to 20 minutes each, that was put out weekly in theaters.
That's 2 seasons of a show on
Yeah.
Netflix.
So basically it's propaganda because Batman, the censorship, he can't be a vigilante, so he's a government-backed World War II secret agent
Whoa.
stopping this very racist, anti-Japanese sentiment plot line. But it's horrible. There's ethnic
Oh my
slurs. Like the
gosh.
dub had to remove so much of the dialogue because it's just
Oh, no.
horrible. The two things that came from this that then the comics stole back was the perception of Alfred. So
What?
before this, in the comics, Alfred was a clean-shaven, portly butler. And in this, the person they cast was a slim, mustachioed man. And so from then on, Alfred
What?
is the classic thin, mustachioed Alfred and not what they had been drawing before.
Weird.
Weird. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, this is going to be the timbre of the whole episode is like, well, this guy was in that, and I guess we're starting to do that now and
A
forgetting
little
the
bit of a
rest.
Dali flavor.
Yeah. And then also with all of this spying subterfuge, there's a element. He has a completely underground crime lab called the Bat's Cave, which then becomes the Bat Cave in the comics. Yeah.
No. So, oh, wow. So this is the 2 things that get pulled out of this.
This World War II
Lord.
thing. Yeah. Yeah.
Lord.
We had mentioned, maybe in the Justice League one, there was a psychiatrist. Now we're moving into the Silver Age stuff. Frederick Wortham had published this book called Seduction of the Innocent in 1954, asserting that kids are imitating these crimes in the comic books.
Hmm.
And it's a blight on society, kind of like the video games Mortal Kombat thing.
Right.
And these are quotes from the book. He was saying Superman is a symbol of race superiority. Wonder Woman is a lesbian recruiting poster.
Whoa.
And so, of course, now we get to the Robin stuff. Batman has these homosexual overtones, and they're portrayed as lovers. This is one of the first fictional characters attacked for this, is in 54 with this. And so this is starting to change some of the character qualities of him,
Right.
more of the playboy, lessening the allegations and pushing him towards romantic relationship. So Batwoman comes
Right.
in 56, Batgirl comes in 61, Catwoman gets
Oh, I
updated and
see.
either subdued because of her sexual overtones or added in to say he has a sexual interest. With the updated Comics Code Authority and the changes post World War II, the feel of comics is taking on
Right.
a lighter, sillier tone. So this is where you get Ace the Bat Hound, his bat dog sidekick, because Superman has Crypto the Super Dog, which my brother informed
Lord.
me that there's actually a film coming out in July with
What?
Kevin Hart and Dwayne Johnson voicing
Oh
the Bat
god.
Hound and the Super Dog.
Oh no. God.
I said, why not?
Uh
But these things are coming
yeah.
about late 50s, early 60s, alongside the space race, culturally, the fear of communism within. So there's a ton of alien invasion movies, Invasion of the Body Snatchers.
Right.
All
Yep.
this stuff is coming out. So there's more sci-fi oriented angles to Batman. This is where Mr. Freeze comes in. He's got this
Mm.
science-y, mad
Yeah, he looks
scientist.
like Disney World
Right.
1965, doesn't he?
Yeah, he's weird. The
When does the show actually start?
66, so we're almost there.
Oh, it is. Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah. So with all of that, this looks like the death of this. 64, sales are in a free fall everywhere, all comics. DC is planning on killing it altogether. The editor of
This isn't going anywhere.
Yeah, well, this is getting out of hand. The editor of our Justice League episode, working with Gardner Fox, Julius
Yeah.
Schwartz, he's assigned to Batman. And so, as you mentioned, Detective Comics, they put Batman back in there.
There he goes.
Yeah, in issue 327, and
That's a lot. Look, so he was in episode 20, 30.
Yeah.
Something. Okay. See what I'm talking about?
Yeah. So he comes back.
Can't just use Detective Comics when it's convenient for you.
Yeah. Revitalized, big on the front cover, new look. They got a new artist, Carmine Infantino. This is the start of the yellow circle on the chest. This is the definition of Batman. They get rid of all the space aliens and time travel and Ace the Bat Hound.
I'm wearing a Batman shirt. I'm wearing it on
really?
my chest right now. I had no idea. This is an accident. Complete accident.
So this is in 64 when that happens. Hilarious. Julius Schwartz and the new artist didn't really know the mythos, and they're trying to do something new. So Batman holds a group of criminals at gunpoint. And then they're like, oh, that's the fan reaction.
And he rob them? I want
They're like, you can't do that. You can't threaten people with it. Batman doesn't do it. He hasn't done that for a while now.
All right, everybody. Stop talking. Get in the corner. Stop talking. Get on the floor.
Yeah. So you can, again, it's chaos. The people making it don't even know what he's supposed to, what he was before.
It's just him doing like petty robbery of like 4 people.
Yeah, but he can't. Now here comes your favorite, the 66, the TV show.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I'm confused.
Yeah.
Because I watched this film and I was like, this is the beginning? Because this has existed almost in a pillar in my mind. I've never seen this, but I've been more aware of the show.
Yeah.
When it comes to this movie, I've seen things like the shark bit or the bomb bit. I didn't realize the shark bit is in the opening sequence of the film, basically. I have trouble contextualizing this and the show because in my mind, I'm like, oh, I thought this was the capstone to the show, but it's really the kickoff.
Basically, yeah. So how did this get going? An unlikely source, a now notorious film buff, Hugh Hefner, of all people, is where this starts. He was a big fan and screened all 15 chapters of the original serialized World War II one at the Playboy Mansion in 64. He got copies of it. It was his thing. It got a lot of press that he was doing this.
No, this could be something. It could be something, guys. Come on, look at it.
So Columbia then re-releases this all put together as a marathon showing in theaters, an evening with Batman and Robin in 64. Wow. This is big in college towns. You had hearkened to our James Bond episode. ABC is looking at the hip fun style of The Man from U.N.C.L.E., which NBC is doing in 64. Mm-hmm. Wacky, zany, spy, globe-trotting stuff.
Exotic.
So they get the Batman license and they hand it over to producer William Dozier, who had never read the comics, takes a look at what had been going on with Astro Dog and all that, And after looking at them, he's like, we got to lose all the seriousness and make it campy.
Okay.
He even becomes the uncredited narrator from the show. The tune in tomorrow, same bat time, same bat
Yes.
channel. He's all up in this. This made me interested in camp because it does tie into some other stuff with Batman as a concept.
Well, when you say camp, this is what people think of.
Yeah. So camp, the origin comes from a critique of homosexual or effeminate behavior from centuries. So in 1870, there was a letter from the magistrate in London, and he describes illegal homosexual acts as camp undertakings.
So if you say a movie's campy, you're just calling it gay?
Well, literally, like the first dictionary definition in the early 1900s was like ostentatious, exaggerated theatrical mannerisms of a man exhibiting such behavior. Like that is the direct one-to-one. It became part of the 1960s culture and aesthetics, and then it broadened to being sort of exaggerative or impertinent, like the questioning of the artsy aesthetics in an exaggerated way. But yeah, this is
like seeing classical Disney villains, in the way that they're drawn and the way that they move. They have those particular qualities that are
queer coded, or a lot of people put that in. So the producer also said it's the only situational comedy on air without a laugh track right now. Like it was supposed to be that, because that's what he saw Batman was. And Adam West was also like, I knew I was getting into a farce. He was apparently the only person who could deliver the audition lines with a straight face. That's how he got involved. It was super popular, ran for 120 episodes. The movie was supposed to come out first. You had alluded to that, like
I'm contextualize how the movie and the show exist together, because I'm confused.
They had pitched the movie to come out first to generate interest in the show, but it wasn't a good proposition because it was so expensive, and the way that the production cycles lined up, they just couldn't make it happen. So the movie was shot slapdash. The script was written in 10 days. It was awful.
Wow.
And it comes out in between the first and second season.
Gotcha.
In fact, a lot of the movie was designed to benefit the show. So like there's a lot of vehicle usage. There's helicopter, the Batcopter, there's boating.
There's the Bat Cave,
That was used as a device to get stock footage for the show for the second and third season because they couldn't support or afford that.
I was watching it wondering, I was like, so is this the same Bat Cave set from the show, or is this the first iteration of this thing and then they rebuilt this? I'm just in my own filmmaker mind when I'm looking at it. I'm like trying to understand where the image I'm looking at actually exists in time, and then bringing what I know as a filmmaker to it, and being like, okay, so did the show come after this? And did they recreate this? Is this the same set? Did they preserve it? Where was it at? All this.
I'm not sure about the cave. I know they did build a lot of stuff for the movie that then benefited the show later on, but
it's smart producing. To be honest, no matter even if you're just trying to get the footage, or if you're trying to actually fabricate, like, okay, now we have the car, now we have some of these costumes,
all of that. So it exploded, increased sales of the comic book, brought elements of the show into the comic book, Alfred coming back in, Batgirl. They're like, oh, that's what people like. Okay, we're going to throw all that back in there. The show, though, only lasted 3 seasons, was canceled in 1968.
Canceled?
Yeah. It wasn't
canceled. What, for low? Like it had low ratings?
Yeah.
Like
people.
Things on TV?
The dark mood of the Vietnam War is settling over. People are not
I guess
interested.
we're growing. We're maturing. We're moving on. That's how fast. That's how fast that's how fast culture matures.
And also, Batman is suiting the needs of the culture. And I was talking to my brother about it, and it's like Batman is deputized by the mayor in the show and the movie.
Right.
He is, but people have a grave distrust of authority and people in law enforcement roles. So it doesn't work anymore for that purpose.
I heard Commissioner Gordon is in cahoots with that bat thing. He's working with him.
Yeah.
This sounds like a crazy conspiracy.
Yeah. That's like the bat phone then becomes this
it's like the crocodile in the sewers.
Yeah, Batman. Yeah. But the campy side of it, this is what people think superhero comic characters are then. the
Right.
bat whatever, the bat shark repellent, and like Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy from SpongeBob. It just gets mythologized as, like you're
Right.
saying, it's like, oh, this was what Batman was for a lot of people, for most people, because it was such a splash culturally.
Right.
But the comics are in a decline. People aren't interested in this. This brings us to the dark roots starting to take hold in the Bronze Age. These two guys, Dennis O'Neil, the editor, and Neil Adams, they're trying to get back to what Kane and Finger were after, and they want to make it grimmer and darker. So this is all in the comics. Robin's in college. Batman is now working solo, back to the original before Robin came in.
Mm-hmm.
He's not in this mansion. He's got a penthouse in the Wayne building downtown.
Hmm.
Some of the elements that come in for the darker, grittier stuff. Joker is now a homicidal maniac again.
Hmm.
They also add Ra's al Ghul as a new villain, which then,
Okay.
when you think about it, it's like, oh, Batman Begins, which we'll get to in the second part of this, but like
Mm-hmm.
he's also this revitalization of the darker sensibility.
That makes sense. Yeah, immediately. Yeah.
Yeah, along with Lucius Fox, who is also part of the darker revitalization. Like, where was he in these other movies?
Right.
So fans liked it with the comics, but the sales just couldn't go up. Comics are slumping. It's at an all-time low in 85. What's going on film-wise in this span of time? This was what you were saying, was you're like, what the heck happened between the 66 film and the 89 film?
Yeah, the show and the 89 movie.
Yeah.
I'm just like, I have no idea who was trying to make anything happen with the property.
So this was the most interesting part to me, a name that I had never heard of that most people don't talk about, and he's this hidden reason kind of for all this, because like I said, the comics are in decline.
I want to know who to blame.
So just in terms of what was in this film sphere, CBS had the rights and they wanted to do a Batman in outer space film. That was in the works.
It'd have been just like what Austin Powers was getting at in the
right, parodying
like
itself beyond.
Exactly.
Yeah,
going to space and that kind of stuff. I see it. That's not the most ridiculous thing that I've seen in a Batman piece of content.
Yeah, it went nowhere though. But
that's fine.
Yeah, so let it die.
Just want to say, not the I can see it.
Right. Yeah. But who doesn't see it? And our mystery man, Michael Uslan, his story, bewildering to me. He's a comic book fan. This is what he starts out as. So in high school, he is when the 60s stuff is going on. He hates this portrayal in his teenage years because he has been reading the noir comics. He had 30,000 comics in his garage. His parents were like, you can collect these as long as you read other things too. And so he lives in New Jersey. He's just working class family. He goes to school at Indiana University. He's getting his law degree. He's super in love with comics and comic books. He starts while he's still a student there, gets in line with other departments and starts teaching a comic books as mythology course. He's the first accredited course ever that takes comic books seriously as a literary medium. While he's also, and so his whole thing, he's like, I want to make a dark, serious version like the comics were in 39. Let me get back to this. I love this. His law degree pays off. He merges his passion with his full-time job as a production attorney and fights tooth and nail, acquires the rights in 79 with another co-producer. Now he wants to find a way to get what he wants. So he reaches out to Richard Maybaum, who we didn't mention him, but a huge influence with James Bond. He did 13 of the Bond films.
My God.
Had a writing credit and had written 8 Bond films by the time Michael reaches out to him.
Wow.
Which, remember, like the upward trajectory of Bond, boom, 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 boom. Like this is the guy that he wants. Although what's interesting, back to our Bond thing, it's like Bond went campy. Bond lost all credibility.
Exactly. That's exactly why I wanted to do this one, because I knew that it and Bond had a lot, just, in terms of a timeline. They look interestingly in what the character has gone through and through the culture, how the culture has changed and how it's pulled these characters in all these different directions. It's pulled them in similar directions.
For sure. So Michael tries to get this writer. He's not interested. Michael keeps pitching this idea as not campy. Columbia, United Artists, everybody's declining. He decides, I'm going to write a script on my own called Return of the Batman. And Superman came out the year before he got the rights. So people are looking at that too and being like, he's saving cats from trees. why would we do a dark Batman?
Right, right.
It falls, I mean, this is 10 years, this random guy from New Jersey trying to get it made.
Because in the world that he exists, they can't conceptualize anything that's not bright colors and zap,
Mhm.
wow, pow.
Yeah,
You know, they
yeah,
just like that doesn't exist. Like what you just said, when we think about Superman, it's still bright, it's still cheery, it's still comic book
yeah.
in the classic sense. In this world, what we now decades and decades later now, oh my god, what we now we're like, oh god, superheroes are so gritty. I'm tired, you know. I'm
Mhm.
so tired of it. Like we are on the other end of how of this cycle that we've been on, and he's at the beginning of it, going like, none of these things can I relate to because they're not real.
Yeah. So Michael Uslan is still involved, but we'll get to him when he comes back in an important way. But other people are getting attached off and on with his idea, with sort of the Superman. Like, so for example, Tom Mankiewicz, who wrote Superman and 5 of the James Bond films, he wrote a
Mm-hmm.
script in '83. And he
Hmm.
even got concept art from one of the comic artists who was doing Batman in the '70s.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, I'd love to see
So there's
that.
a lot of, other people coming on board and somewhat involved or adjacent to superheroes. Ivan Reitman was on it, Joe Dante was on it.
Look how many people have an idea of what they think Batman is
Yeah,
already.
and I think in our Ghostbusters episode, we said he passed on this to make it because Ghostbusters comes out in '84.
I believe he did.
Yeah,
Yeah, I heard.
so go back and listen to that episode if you wanted how he didn't start doing this, but Tom Mankiewicz's script was 9 rewrites by 9 different writers. It's
God.
not going anywhere. The savior of it all, coming back to the comics, who had been trying since the '70s, continually doing darker
Hmm.
stuff. There's a 1986 miniseries, limited series, not attached, called The Dark Knight Returns by Frank Miller.
Yeah.
And this is what everybody knows is like, oh, it came out the same year as Watchmen, both inspired the revolution of dark, gritty comic stuff. And this again happened because there was a new Batman editor who recruited Frank Miller, who was doing a darker version of Daredevil for Marvel, and they came out with
Mm.
this thing. 55-year-old Batman coming out of his retirement in this punk dystopian future. Pretty interesting that it's like, oh, Batman was already over. Like, to instead of doing a reboot or a revitalizing of an origin, it's like, no, he's old and
No,
done.
he's just old. Yeah.
What would have happened if we kept writing him the way we were supposed to?
Well, this is fascinating because I have a soapbox about just this period in American comic books and particularly Watchmen's place in it,
Yeah.
because Watchmen really to me seems like the end of American comic books in so many ways. I feel like we have the argument presented in it is so paralyzing in terms of what we can do with
Mhm.
superheroes past that point, when I think that this comic book actually makes the point in another way, is that, you know, we're looking to where can a story like this actually fit. And it's interesting that now we're pushing to him to be elderly, you know, and we're seeing that we're seeing that trend now in film and those types of things. But these things come out the exact same year, and they tell you exactly where the genre is at.
Yeah.
um,
That's interesting. Yeah, that
and I struggle to think that we really have moved anywhere substantially past the point. Really, I still feel like we are arguing about it, Watchmen, basically, in every single piece of superhero content that comes out. Is it right? Are we wrong? Can superheroes also be bad?
yeah.
You know, so that's where I want to plug My Hero Academia was the answer to that kind of thing.
Yeah.
It's I just this is such an inflection moment for American comic books and what they're going to be from
Yeah.
here on out. What were they? What are they supposed to be? And what are they going to be? They're very really interesting questions. And at this point,
Yeah.
in 1985, I don't know that I don't. It is the inflection point, and I don't know that we've recovered in a
Yeah.
lot of ways.
It's hard to separate Batman from it because if you look at it's like they're all trying to go back to what he was originally, and then all the other, the questions of like, is he doing the right thing? Is he really helping? He's trying to revitalize Gotham. Like all of that was there
Right.
from the beginning. It got lost, and they're trying to bring it back. Versus other superheroes, where it's like those were never the questions that those superheroes were
Yeah.
necessarily asking. So I think at least with Batman, it's like he can't be separated from those
Yeah.
problems and those questions. like you're saying, germinates out to the rest of superheroes, but it is his identity. It is his relentless
Yeah.
struggle to fix things, but can't, like all the stuff.
I think what I draw down on in this interesting thing is the character of Bruce Wayne. I don't know if necessarily see him in real life as much as I feel like we thought we did then. I
Right.
feel like you play the Bruce Wayne character out in real life. He I just don't, Batman's not coming to save you.
Or it's like
The,
we're questioning the idea of like, is there such a thing as an ethical billionaire, even if he dons a cape and
This is
fights
what I'm
crime?
meaning.
Yeah.
This is exactly what I'm meaning. And I'm getting to the point where I'm like, oh man, are we just embracing billionaires and those types of things because we view them in this type of light, and so we start to not look at them as being nefarious actors, and that like has all this slipped by us basically since Jurassic Park was written. Like have we been conditioned to view these people as our friends when in all actuality they're the aggressors?
Yeah.
That's where I'm like, Tony Stark is a war criminal. That's kind of where I'm sitting at. Like, oh my God, have we been conditioned to misidentify the enemy there? Basically, I don't know.
Yeah.
Don't follow me there, folks.
Well,
I'm just like,
yeah.
I'm like, what's responsible for everything now? Is it Batman?
Almost. We'll see. With this coming out in '86, just a plug. There's a 2-part animated film that came out in 2012 and then in 2013. That is the animated version of The Dark Knight Returns. That does a really good job. If you don't want to seek out the comics, you'll get this narrative. And this is the first female Robin that kind of takes over the mantle of his retirement. It's all in there. I would recommend.
Remember that being advertised. Yeah. Now I actually am interested to get.
Yeah, not theatrical, but there's a billion.
Yeah.
Animated, non-theatrical ones. Yeah. So this same year, another editor, Dennis O'Neil, comes back in, and he is going to revamp the Batman line. So he gets Frank Miller to do this year one storyline, which is in the comics. It's not an offshoot thing, but it's updating his origins. The Commissioner Gordon relationship, which was once really important, is now enhanced. And Batman is more inexperienced because they're rebooting. DC did a whole reboot thing with all the characters. And then in '88, Alan Moore's The Killing Joke single one-shot thing blew up. So that's the year before. This brings us to the '89 Batman. How this comes to be, Tim Burton takes over in '86, this idea for a Batman film, which is the same year as The Dark Knight Returns comic book comes out.
Interesting.
Tim Burton is known, and this gave him guff because he said he's not a comic book fan. Like, why would you start a comic book movie if you don't read them? But he loved The Dark Knight Returns and The Killing Joke. This is what's in the zeitgeist now for comics. He hires a screenwriter to remove the camp from all the different million drafts that have been going around. Although it's not greenlit until the success of Beetlejuice in '88.
Right.
With that, Michael Keaton he worked with, he was like, Michael Keaton can do this. He's got this obsessive quality. He can pull this off. He had done his first dramatic performance in '88. But when people heard that, they're like, Tim Burton, who did Pee-wee's Big Adventure, and Michael Keaton, who's Mr. Mom and is a comedy actor, this is going to be horrible. This is going to be the '66 movie and show all over again.
That's an amazing way to look at it too, because Burton is coming out of school. As Beetlejuice is getting made and off the ground, they really, and Michael Keaton is not established. It's kind of incredible that they actually got the job, because they don't really, they get the job basically because of the portfolio behind Burton and his style.
Yeah.
Disney was already after him to a certain extent, but that's ultimately what gets it, and that has nothing to do with comic book anything.
Yeah. And like I said, he was not even in. He
exactly.
vocally
That's
was
my
not
point.
interested.
That's my point. Is that somebody eventually saw that bringing this style to this material was going to produce a result unlike anything that we had ever seen before. And the problem with, oh no, we're not going to send him to space, because that's exactly like everything we've seen before. That's why I can see it. Somebody was smart enough to go, oh, this visual style, this aesthetic inclination matched up with this material and character, that is going to yield a result that's worth looking at.
Definitely. And so with that, just one little tidbit as far as a Batman-ism Keaton was concerned with the secret identity because they're doing this darker, realistic, to a sense, he was
Mhm.
like, this doesn't make sense. People would know who he was. So he was like, maybe he wears contact lenses to disguise. Like, how am I going to do this? Eventually, he settled on a performance move, which is when he's Batman, his voice is lowered and
Ah.
growlier, which then becomes
That's
iconic in film version land, that's what
Yeah, that
happens.
sticks, actually. It's pretty impressive. I didn't realize that that kind of is Keaton's,
Mhm.
part, because West does not do anything like that. I think I'm trying to think about Kilmer and Clooney, and we'll get into that
Yeah.
stuff more next week, but I think they are a little bit more themselves, but we
Mhm.
obviously know that Christian Bale is
Full on,
has
yeah.
such a defining aspect of that character, which
Yeah.
has now redefined that character for an entire generation. That the voice thing is really coming straight out of Keaton's
Yeah,
toolbook.
to flip the characters. But yeah, when this came out, it was the top grossing film of the year and the 5th highest grossing film ever when it came out.
Yeah, that, and again, not only to exemplify even further, this is proving that a superhero film can be done in a series. Again, removing all the camp. Now we're not so forgiving when it comes to effects and action sequences and those types of things.
Yeah.
When you compare the first Superman and then '89 Batman, they look like they exist in different decades because they did.
Right, yeah.
um,
But yeah, it's the
but
PG-13 superhero. This is it.
this is what Burton and Company brings to this, proves to the industry that this is viable in a way never before conceived.
Yeah.
And not just viable for this character, this is viable for an entire genre.
Yeah. This is the fallout of this because it's like people are like, "What is this movie? Why is a young children's beloved character dark and violent?" Because they didn't know it as that if you weren't following along in the ups and downs of the comics. But it's like now everyone wants that.
Right.
Everyone wants the PG-13, like the newest one is PG-13. People thought, "Oh, could it be R?" No, there's some R superhero movies, but that was never even a thought to say, "Oh, we're gonna have a
Right.
PG-13 superhero movie." So that
Right.
was one of the things that it did. Like you're saying, how did we get to this in the film world? Here's some of the things. So the merch and the hype insanity, this is maybe you might say like the first one where it's expected to be a hit.
Right. Again, now let's contextualize it. So you have Jaws in '75, Star Wars in '77. We're on the, we're building what the idea of the blockbuster is just barely within the
Mhm.
decade going before this. So we're only getting now to the point, like Ghostbusters and those types of
Yeah.
things, that these huge multi department merchandise retail
Yeah, yeah,
rollouts,
yeah.
McDonald's tie-in, that kind of thing. This is really it emerging and breathing for the first time.
Yeah. And with Jaws and Star Wars and even Ghostbusters, we had talked about where the merch was a afterthought because they didn't know
Exactly.
this.
Now they know to expect this. They know what is possible, and they're trying to reach beyond that because they have learned through Jaws and Star Wars and
Yeah.
all these other brands that have come around, what a spectacle can
Yeah.
generate,
The
and how to harness that, and how to expect it.
the Batman logo in '89, so 6 months before release, they knew. I mean, you just slap that on it, they have it. They're like, "You will like this. This
Boom.
will be a hit." Insane marketing beforehand. So over $750 million in merchandise sold from when they went,
Oh.
like in January, like it came out in June, and they started in January pumping Batman junk
Oh my
everywhere.
god. Oh my gosh.
A couple other things that it did to the film industry and then superhero movies following onward. The opening weekend being king. So it was
Mm.
not always a given. It was a marker, but like that summer, just weeks apart, Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade broke records. Then Ghostbusters 2 broke records. Then Batman. And that 3 days, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Batman surpassed its budget by Sunday.
Oh my
So they
god.
said, "Oh, we can gauge the short-term profitability."
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
that became the only goal
Yeah.
was the opening weekend is king. It's the only thing that matters. It's the test of whether or not this worked, when that wasn't really the case before this summer, and specifically Batman, when they said, "Oh, we knew this was gonna be good," and it made it back
Good
in
lord.
3 days.
Do you have the statistics of how long it stayed? I think
So
it stayed in theaters for an insane amount of time, and I think it stayed at number one for quite a while.
So that was what was interesting, and it's the opposite of what you'd think. It's the other thing that it did differently was
Mm.
the home video release. So I think
Yes.
maybe it stayed in, but I don't think it helped because this was less than 5 months after they were trying to hit the Christmas blitz and get out the
Mhm.
VHSs to people. So this
If I
created
remember correctly, that it stayed in theaters all the way up until its home release, basically.
right, but it basically killed the idea of a second run market where
Mhm,
I think
mhm.
we talked about it before, but like these things were
And
having
now
a
they're learning. And
resurgence.
again, we have to contextualize this. We're getting home video for the first time. This is 1989.
Yeah.
VHS is really becoming a marketable thing where you can afford it and bring it home. We're understanding now that, oh, if we put out the home video version too early, we undercut the second run, like you're saying there. So they're learning all these things where now they understand the merchandising, and they've got they're mocking up the figures a few months and before, you know, all that stuff is working out. They're still understanding, well, wait, if we throw this out there too early, then we can't actually get more money on the back end while it's still viable.
Yeah.
And they're learning all of this with these types of giant rollout
Yeah.
movies.
But then DVD,
This
yeah.
one, I'm just glad that we're talking about this one because this is such an important movie, just in terms of the
Yeah,
industry,
yeah. All these
and
pieces, yeah.
learning how these massive spectacles come together, learning how companies have learned how to piece these things together over the years. The missteps here, we're talking about one of the missteps of this rollout. Well, they fixed that.
Well, and with the big thing, as you're saying, the franchise mentality, this is the ability to make big, quick money from a pre-existing property. It's like it's all
Yeah,
preordained. It's
yeah.
already there. Now we see it again and again and again.
Trying to think of the one that really, I think, parallels it. Not with so much this one. This property has a lot leading up to 1989, but in terms of the timeline of it coming out, having other pieces of material, and it being kind of a phenomenon at the exact same time as like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles,
Yeah.
is kind of coming to mind there. When they have the comic book, they have the
Merch.
cartoon show, they have now the live action movie came out in 1990. The sequel was on I think just the next year or the year after that. So I'm trying to think in terms of like these spectacle, these Hollywood manufacturer rollouts of these things, and what they were learning from them, and how we ended up in this. Every week we're missing out on the biggest movie ever made.
Yeah, like Transformers followed suit. A lot of the 80s nostalgia stuff followed suit. Yeah. So that leads us to my final point and tease for next week, which is this guy that I briefly mentioned, the working class lawyer from New Jersey, Michael.
Get your mountain of comic books out of my garage, Michael.
So I would call him, I saw this in an article, Batman's Batman. So he retains involvement, and I will explain this next week, but like he has been an executive producer on all Batman films, including Joaquin Phoenix's Joker, including the animated series in the 90s, including this just released 2022 film. He has his hand in everything thus far because he bought into it and was the comic book nerd in the garage. So in 1989, this film just gets released. It's a huge success. He gets invited to an expensive New York lunch, pricey bottles of wine. It's a meeting with some guys from a publishing company that he hadn't heard of, or I guess he'd heard of it, but not many people had, called Marvel. And they're like, we like what you're doing. And that's all I'm going to say.
Dang, you're going to have to pick that up in episode 2 next week, ladies and gentlemen.
All the rest of the Batman junk.
Well, I mean, and really all the stuff that you probably thought we were going to talk about, you know, all that stuff. So we had to get this context and lead up into 1989, because what happens after 1989, not just to Batman, but to superheroes in general, a lot to cover. And I think that's going to be a beefy episode to get into next week.
Pulling all the pieces of the little snippets of everything that Batman latched on to.
What are some, man, we talked about a bunch of episodes that you got to go back. I mean, we've covered a lot around Batman, but we've never actually taken on Batman. So I know that we mentioned, you know, obviously the Justice League episode, the Stan Lee episode. We did Joker back in 2019 when it came out.
Look at James Bond for a similar film progression over time. You mentioned My Hero Academia for a different superhero take.
We also did Watchmen, so go out and check that out. We did Watchmen when they did the HBO series out. I feel like there's one other really good one that we mentioned that I'm forgetting now, but go through our episodes and check out some other, maybe some
adjacent,
adjacent, some peripheral information on this comic book road that we're trying to trace down.
Yeah.
Let us know what you're reading. Let us know what you're interested in. Get in touch with us at ILLITERATEPOD on Instagram.
And then if you wouldn't mind sharing an episode with a friend, this one or any other that you think someone would love, send it their way.
If one of our titles makes you think of somebody, send them that episode. Give us a rating. That helps us out so much. You really don't know how much it helps us out.
And we will catch you in part 2 next week.